So I'm back from Alaska. Gotta get this 300C ready to go because there's an inspection next week. I've got it scheduled and I'm not missing it. Sup everybody, welcome back. My name's Andrew. This is the Make It and Break It YouTube channel. Behind me is our Project Ute Chrysler 300C. I've been struggling with this thing, trying to get it ready to get inspected by the State Patrol, which would be awesome. We have an inspection next week, and I don't want to miss this one. I've already missed a couple. I've had to cancel some. I actually just missed one. Oops. But I want to get this thing going so that we can do all the real work on it. So what we're doing today is investigating our front end clanging, banking, cracking sound, whatever's going on up here in this front end that sounds like something on the driver's side front is hitting something else. I've already tested one thing today. So this car came with headlight washers. You can see the hole cut out for the washers here. And this one is still fully intact. So what I did already this morning is I taped this thing here to make sure this thing wasn't, you can kind of maybe hear that, make sure this thing here wasn't causing our banging noise. And I drove around and I got pretty much the same noise. So it's not that. So I don't remember this sound before we replace the bumper. So next thing I think I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this bumper back off. Affix everything so that it doesn't fall off and give it one more drive around and see if that fixes the sound. Because if that's the sound, then we have a place to look. If not, I've already taken a quick look. Well, we'll come back to that if that's not the solution. So we went for a drive and it's still there. Not that I was really thinking it was going to be something that we had caused. It sounds more like clanking or rubbing or something like that. But I was hoping it'd be that easy and I could just go through some of the stuff that's really accessible. We're gonna have to get down in here and try and figure it out. But we also have a new problem again. At least it's not a new old problem yet. We have a new check engine light. So our check engine light is the P0507. For those of you who don't speak fluent check engine light mil codes, it means the idle's high. The idle's higher than expected and the engine's having to compensate for that. There could be a few things that is. That could be a vacuum leak. That could be, or maybe there's a MAF problem and we're getting weird readings out of our MAF. Or MAP, I think, on this. I think this car is MAP, not MAF. And anyway, maybe we're getting some weird readings into the sensor that aren't matching with the air-fuel ratio on exhaust, and that's kind of what trips the code. So we're going to continue working on that here over the next couple days, and hopefully we'll get that fixed before the inspection. But we also want to be able to, you know, make our car street legal, which means we got to clear this check engine code. And so we're going to go switch gears and work on that a little bit, especially since I don't have to take anything apart right now for it. We're going to start looking for a vacuum leak. That's probably the most likely culprit here on this car. So it's pretty old vacuum lines, old O-rings, stuff like that. There's probably a leak somewhere that's causing ourselves some trouble. It's not a huge leak, it feels like, if it is a vacuum leak. So we might have to search a little bit for that. So we'll get that going. Okay. So I had to go do a couple shopping trips. You would not believe how many stores I had to go to today to find some hydraulic oil. That's for a new little toy that'll help us out here, hopefully. I hope I don't need it, but we'll probably end up having to use it in order to go inspect this front end a little bit better here at here at my home garage. If I could get it back to the shop, I'd just throw it on a lift and that'd be a lot easier, but I can't get that back there right now. But now we're gonna go look for some vacuum leaks. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. I've seen you can look online. Just look up like finding vacuum leaks or that sort of thing. You can use stuff from like flammable things like propane, lighter fluid. I wouldn't use lighter fluid. Starter fluid. when the engine's running, and that you should see a change in the RPMs. People use brake clean. I typically don't want to use like super flammable things, so I'm gonna use the tried and true water-filled bottle. This is a Pepsi bottle. It's not quite as American as like Mountain Dew, but I didn't have any Mountain Dew bottles around, so Pepsi it is. Kind of the process is you turn on the engine down there, especially if it's cold, because then you can see the RPM changes a little bit better because of the way the ECU interprets all the signals when it's cold versus hot. And then you take this and you just kind of spray it over your vacuum lines and listen for either a hissing or a change in your RPMs. So we're gonna give that a shot and see if we can't identify some sort of vacuum leak in here. I was doing a little bit of looking. Our EGR valve connection into the intake seems a little loose, so we're gonna start there and check every other vacuum line we can possibly see and see if we can't hear something. So, see how that goes. So the water test was inconclusive, but I was poking around a little bit after that, trying to figure out if I'm missing a vacuum line or not, and I think I just found the problem. I will run the water test one more time, make sure it's not the only thing that I'm missing, but it doesn't act like it's a big vacuum leak. It acts like it's a small vacuum leak, meaning the car doesn't die most of the time, but it does have some higher revs than normal on idle and everything else. So what I found was this. Get this in here. So this right here, this line runs all the way back around here into this valve, which does something. I'm sure it does something. They don't just put stuff in here because it does nothing. But if you notice here, this line has a nice little thing here on one side of the barb fitting that doesn't have anything here. And then if we pop it off, this backside just has nothing. It's just sitting on there. And, oh, I don't know if we saw that. It's just sitting on there, and I can like pop it off without any sort of trouble. And that happens on both sides. So that might be our vacuum leak. I'm gonna do a water test one more time, make sure nothing changes. But that's kind of looking like our main culprit so far, is this little line right here. All right. So it's much later, as you can see, because it's dark outside. And I realized I may have misdiagnosed, or I'm not sure I properly diagnosed the problem here. So, what I thought was the problem, I was pointing to down here, is this. There's a vacuum line out there. It's called the vacuum harness, I believe, is the specific name for this thing. So I was looking up part numbers for it, see if I can go find one that's around here. Looking up the service manual, and well, I found pictures of it, and the pictures look pretty much like it sits now. Doesn't mean it isn't the problem, but it means that basically what I diagnosed as the problem is not necessarily the problem. Because my water test was pretty inconclusive. I couldn't find any audible differences, nor did I see any bubbling or anything like that. So I went and got a better tool for performing a vacuum check. It's one of these. So there's a couple ways you can perform like a vacuum leak check. The professional 4.0 way is to smoke check it, which, I mean, I wouldn't mind doing if you guys want to see me build a smoke creator thing, then I'll do that. But another way to do it is to introduce flammable vapors or liquids near where you think the vacuum leak is, and if the vacuum leak is there, it'll draw it into the intake system and then send it through the engine, and you'll get a rev change. That's why people use things like brake clean or starter fluid or carb cleaner, because those are all flammable liquids, and if you introduce them near your leak, then it'll get in and up the revs. Problem is, those can also pool, and if your engine's hot, they can flash and start fires, and it's bad. Bad juju all around. So a safer way to do it is to use propane. So propane is a gas, it disperses a little bit more for you. So you really aren't going to have it pooling in your hot engine and lighting off. About the only problem you'd see with this thing is if you had an arc in your gas area, that would also cause like a fireball. But you might not have a sustained flame at that point. So the quick and dirty way to do it is to get a gas torch like this and let the propane out, and then go check all of your vacuum lines and run it near the vacuum line. So if the revs go up, you found a vacuum hole, or a hole in your vacuum line, or a leak. If it doesn't, then I'm willing to say at this point that it's probably not a vacuum problem. We might have to go look at some of the other problems associated with this error code. So we'll give that a shot. So that didn't work. Torch was working as far as I could tell, and we couldn't find any vacuum leaks. So vacuum leaks are not our problem, even though the symptoms seemed good. Who knows, we'll try everything else, and then it might come back to vacuum leaks. So, see the computer behind me. You probably can't see the screen right now. It's pulling up the service manual, and some of the first things they say to check are your intake path. Make sure it's clean and clear of crap, and then make sure your throttle body's working correctly. And what else do they say here? And then it could be a PCM, power control module issue, which I hope it's not. We've been chasing around a lot of weird electronical stuff, so could be, but we're gonna go on the assumption that it's not the PCM at this point. Our next plan of attack here on this P0507 problem is pull off our intake track. So take a look at our filter, take a look at our little intake. There's that little intake pipe thing that we'll pull out and look at. And then, assuming all that's okay and it looks fine, we're gonna go pull off the throttle body and clean it. And probably pull off the throttle body and clean it anyway, because then we can look at like the intake air control valve and a couple other things. So I'm gonna go do that then. Okay, so we're a couple days later, as you can see by the pizza shirt as opposed to the Ducati shirt. And we're trying to fix our rev issue. So you can kind of see the air box. There's the air box. We've pulled apart the intake system up to the upper intake manifold, and we're cleaning out things because one of the things that could be wrong with this car, it's causing high rev, is a dirty intake system, which we do have. I'll show you that in a minute. First, I did try something else before doing this, so I was Googling, and the 300s, I don't know if it's just the Hemis or if it's basically every 300. The computers have a throttle learning system. Maybe that's just a function of having an electronic throttle body. I don't know, I haven't looked too much into it. But this apparently has a procedure where if you turn the key on but don't turn the ignition, don't turn the car on, and you press the throttle pedal all the way down and all the way back, the computer tries to learn. It's like a learning procedure for it, so it learns where it's supposed to be with what throttle position sensor. And that actually made it worse. I immediately, after I did that, I tried to turn the car on, and it immediately revved up and then died. So I don't think the throttle position was a problem. It's probably dirty intakes. I forgot, I did the whole garage cleanup thing. So yeah, there'll be a video on this soon, maybe next week. I don't know when this video goes up. Anyway, got my light. So we'll flip this over here for you guys. So we've got all the intake stuff. This is where your normal intake track goes through, and it comes in, and the throttle body's normally right there. And we can kind of see on the inside there, it's gunked up, caked up. To give you an idea of what we're looking at with the throttle body, I'll show you that in 1 second. This is pretty dirty, even though It's hard to see because it's black on a black interior intake. But we're going to try and clean up this intake as much as possible. Maybe that's causing us our problems, because here's the back side of our throttle body. Let's see if I can't get a good way to show this without blowing you guys all out. So this is the back side. You can see it's just pure black. That's many layers of caked on carbon and combustion products and everything off the back side of this thing, because of the way the exhaust gas recirculation system brings stuff in, as well as just it being near combustion chambers. So we're going to go through and clean this thing for reference if you want to look at the clean side of a throttle body. That's the color of the throttle body metal. So we've got a lot of carbon buildup. So we're going to get this thing clean. Maybe run a clean rag through the intake as much as we can reach it. And then we'll try this all again. All right, so we've got the intake stuff back in. We did clean the throttle body, saw that tons of stuff came off that, but it's actually pretty clean now. And we did go in here and pull fuse number 11, which I believe is this 20 amp fuse, if I can get it to focus a little bit. So it's this fuse right there, which is supposed to be putting the ECU back in throttle body learning, or ECU learning mode, or something about learning and helping it stop these stupid codes. So our next steps are, we're going to go clear the code and then run it through some heat cycles to see if it shows back up again. It usually shows up in 3 or 4 heat cycles. Right now the engine's too hot to be a heat cycle, so it's lunchtime and I'm hungry. So we're going to go grab some lunch, come back, fix that up. And then maybe we'll figure out what's clanking under here. Something's clanking. So, see you guys after that. Oh boy, that light behind me is terrible, but we might have found our crashing, creaking, grinding sound. So, while we're waiting to do our heat cycles, and you see the old man back there, he's been helping me out. We're waiting to do our heat cycles on the engine to see if we fixed our RPM issue. We figured, let's go check out that crashing sound that we started this whole video on, try and figure it out. So I've done a little bit of recreation, but here is the wheel, and you see this all looks fine. You know, here's your suspension pieces, there's your upper control arm. That looks like it's intact. Nothing seems loose in there as far as I can tell. Nothing seems to shake. If I go in here, ooh, that looks better without the light, and I shake it, nothing happens, right? All this stuff looks good. All the parts are in here. I'm not missing a bolt. None of this stuff seems loose or moving around. But if we look back here, and I have replaced this since I've already pulled it apart, this is our front sway bar. So you can see it runs from there. It runs kind of up and around to the end link, which is right here. And our front sway bar down here, let's get this focused, there we go, has a rubber bushing just hanging out of it, which is, that's not how that's supposed to go. I'm pretty sure this bushing, it's not actually a bushing, it looks like it's a dust shield. It just slid out like that when I touched it. And inside you can kind of see, oh god, oh that's terrible focus. Let's get that for you guys. Inside, see where it's running through. Maybe without the light. No, still terrible. Okay, inside you can see where it's running through, and if that's not protected by its dust shield, I could easily see all the lubrication coming out of that and it causing the creaking sound and kind of the crashing sound caused by this rubber thing moving around and hitting everything. So what we're going to do here, and just to make sure that this is the case, I'm going to go pull the other side wheel real quick and we'll show you guys hopefully what a correct one looks like. We're going to pull this bushing, we're going to pull that dust shield off, spray some WD-40 for some quick lubrication in there, and go take it for a quick run. If the creaking goes away, then we found our problem, and it's another thing on the list to fix for this thing. Alright, So this is the passenger side, which doesn't have the clank, and this looks a lot different. So let's see if this light makes it better or worse. It makes it better, sort of. So you can see where our old bushing was kind of shoved out and over and around in here somewhere. Pull that light out for this explanation. Our old bushing was out in here and barely hanging on. I could just pull it around with my hand. This one is fully in. This is the outside edge of what would have been that rubber spacer. That's what it's supposed to look like. The other side looks way different, which pretty much cements that was at least something wrong. Maybe it's not everything wrong, but it's at least something wrong with why we're getting that crashing sound. So we're gonna pop everything back together and go give it a test drive here. And if that sound goes away, then we fixed it. Okay, everybody. Before y'all get angry at me, yes, I know I was calling a dust shield and a bushing. It is actually a bushing. It needs to be there. So I replaced it. And by replaced it, I mean I put it back in. I'm not sure how it got out. But there's been a lot of dodgy repairs on this thing. So my guess is whoever fixed the rest of this crap put that in really badly. Or I did notice there's a little flange thing on these that's supposed to go on the inside of the bushing of the mount, and it was actually inside the mount itself. So maybe the person didn't know they had to move that out to put the bushing in, and just put the bushing partially in, and it just came right out. That could also be a semi-reasonable explanation. Anyway, we put the bushing back in, and it works. There's no clanking, there's no creaking. So hey, pro tip there for all of you out there: if your car is missing, pro tip for all of you out there: if your car is missing a sway bar bushing, things creak and clack and crash and sound horrible. So just put that back in. I think we're gonna call it here today, everybody. I'm tired. The check engine light for the idle air or the idle control still high is there. P0507. If anyone has any tips and tricks, put them down in the comment section below. By the time I see them, I may or may not have already repaired it, but by the time I see them, I may or may not have already repaired it. But this check engine light is a pain because it doesn't have a specific problem. It's like, hey, maybe the intake's bad, or maybe the throttle's bad, or maybe the throttle's not working, or maybe the power control module needs to be replaced. A lot of stuff to go look at. So that's it, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for staying tuned, especially through all of these little nickel and dime, one step forward, two step back type stuff with the Chrysler Project Ute build. So if you liked what we're doing here, you like this video, hit like, subscribe, hit that bell icon. We put out at least 2 videos a week, sometimes more. And once we start getting real big on this, it'll probably be a lot of content come out on the Chrysler. So you definitely want to keep in touch and keep notified when we're putting out new videos. If you disliked it, do hit dislike and tell me in the comments down below why you didn't like it. I really do want to improve my content for all of y'all. And that's it. So thanks for watching. My name's Andrew. This is Make and Break a YouTube video. And just a reminder, guys, you might have a lot of questions about your build, but really the only one that needs to be answered is why not build it? We'll catch you guys later. Focus. Focus. There we go.